very good Friday noon, I guess. We're at
noon. We're at noon.
Like,
lunchtime.
I really say good afternoon. It's like good noon.
Good noon.
Yeah. Sorry. My name is Vignesh. I'm a design manager at XD. Welcome to the stream. I have with me first timer, Ryan Parker, who recently, I guess it's been a while, joined our team as a design PGM. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us. I hope you have an interesting half an hour, because what we're here to talk about is how our design team works. So Ryan, as a design manager myself and as a program manager, I guess what I thought would be interesting in this session is to take our audience through some of, some insights into how we track how our team works, just manage our projects and whatnot. So real quick, before we get into it, I guess, curious to hear your thoughts. Like, what were your first impressions when you first joined our team? 3-4 months ago.
Yeah, so I think, just to give a little bit more background there as well, like, so as a design program manager, at least here at Adobe, what we do is we're focused on scaling and operationalizing the design team to ensure that we are, actioning and delivering on our products and making our customers really happy, and that we're actually doing that in a really fast, scalable manner.
Right. Yeah, and like, as we scale and grow, I guess one of the things we're going to try and do in this session is talk a little bit about how we work and how we track our work, but also maybe get into designing what we think an ideal design dashboard should look like.
Exactly.
I think that'll be a little bit of fun.
Yeah, other ways to connect the dots and like communicate with our stakeholders.
Right. So maybe we start by sharing your screen, because I believe you're going to share a little bit more in-depth sort of thinking, or like this is, so we use JIRA today.
Yes, we do.
To track our team's work. And a lot of it is to really just maintain sanity, because we're trying to do so many things at the same time. We're prioritizing them. We need to communicate that to everybody, and everyone needs to be on the same page.
Right.
So can you take us through, what you're sharing right now? This is sort of an abstract version of the JIRA Kanban board that we use. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, as you were saying, Vignesh, we use JIRA, and a lot of designers I know don't like JIRA, and actually JIRA is something that we've recently started using on the Adobe design team in order to better align with our partner teams and our engineering teams. So we've actually done a lot of work to ensure that everything that we're doing on the design side is involved with our development lifecycle, or our development workflow, so that we're plugged into their process. There's a lot of transparency into what we're doing, and the engineers can see that, give quick feedback, and everything here. So again, as you mentioned, this is just kind of like a high-level abstract version of JIRA. This is probably what we all wish JIRA actually looked like. So a little bit of a nicer design
JIRA on the
JIRA as well.
JIRA is amazingly powerful, though, I must say. And that's one of the reasons we use JIRA, is because we're able to integrate so well with the product and engineering teams. And that allows us to get on the same page about priorities. Definitely couldn't do it without JIRA, for sure. Yeah. I'm curious, like, hi to Tim, Josh, Shreya, and others. I'm curious to hear from our audience, like, what kind of other tools they use. Like Trello and JIRA as well. Like, what are the other tools you're using as we sort of go through this process a little bit more? We'd love to hear some other stories as well. So Ryan, so take us through. So when we conceptualize a problem that we want to solve, or a project comes up, what are the stages that it goes through? Like, how do you figure out, when a designer needs to work on it, and how much time they need to work on it, and when does it move through some of these stages? I'm sure the audience, some of them would be interested to know. Yeah,
so really what we've set up here is these different columns or status items that we have, and this is how we work here at Adobe on our XD design team. This is how we move work through. This is how we get everything done to build the new features that you all love and that we're trying to get to market, to meet all your needs and make you design quicker, and at the speed of thought. And so really we start with our backlog here, which is very standard, very normal. Everyone has one of those, and we add items to the backlog when something's either been prioritized by our customers, by design leadership, or product management as well. We get that into our backlog. We start to groom the story. So for example, here we have awesome feature 1 that we really want to get done. We know a lot of people have been asking for awesome feature 1. That's coming in the next release. And so, we get that in the backlog. That's just kind of more a note now. Okay, hey, we want to get this going at some point. Right. It's not prioritized, but it's something that we know is coming up maybe in the next year even, or next 6 months, probably a little bit further out. At that point, then we would move it into discovery once it becomes prioritized. And in discovery, that's a really important part of the design process, as everybody knows here. And so that's really where we ensure that we build out time to think critically through a problem and actually figure out, what are the real problems we're trying to solve, and then what is the proposed solution to that problem. Right. So here we're working with all our partner teams. We research it. We involve our research team. We involve all of our PM partners as well as all the design leadership as well for the relevant piece of work. We come together, figure out those problems, and then figure out an MVP as well as a proposed solution that everyone's aligned on. So this is where we get that really great early alignment from all partner teams before we actually move forward and start really moving pixels. And it's really, really important here that we don't skip this process, because I think really where other processes break down in other design teams is where when they skip this discovery process, this discovery phase, go right into in progress and spend maybe a few weeks actually designing something real. Right. And then at that point, maybe you're 2 weeks down the line, you realize this actually isn't the right solution. We should have, backed up and spent a little bit more time figuring out what that solution is. Right. And then, so at that point, you're moving it back to the discovery phase, and you've wasted 2 weeks. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're calling this out. And this on our team is a really nice way that we kind of just mark this as the discovery phase, and everyone on the team is aligned that we are spending time properly estimating and figuring out this problem.
Yeah. And what's I think really interesting about this board is what you'd find is at each phase we end up talking to customers and our users, but the conversation is slightly different as it progresses. Because in discovery, we're really just trying to understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve, and it's a lot more open-ended. But as you go towards completion and we're confident that this is a problem we want to solve, gets into more of usability testing of the concept and things of that nature. So another sort of perspective that this Kanban board really gives us, along with just who's working on what and things of that nature.
Exactly.
So I saw someone like Munir talked about Google Keep. That's an interesting one. I haven't heard or seen that before. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I've used Google Keep mostly to help me download images from, because you can't export images directly from Google Slides and all of that. So you have to then put it into Google Keep to then export it. But beyond that, I haven't used it too much.
Got it.
And then I have used Trello a bunch in the past as well for design teams, but I really have found that especially being here, the process we've built here has been way more integrated with the engineering teams I mentioned, and that's really how you're going to build a successful product. Is creating that seamless integration with your design team and your engineering team, and being as close to them as possible. Because the second those start to diverge, that's where you start having your issues. And so we really want to plug in as much as possible, and the design team here has been really willing to adopt JIRA to do that.
Yeah, I want to spend a few more minutes just maybe talking about as it moves through, what are some exit criterias, right? When do you actually decide to move it? Maybe use a couple of minutes to talk about that.
No, I definitely want to continue going through kind of all these columns as well. And so as I was mentioning before, for the discovery process, to leave that and go to planned, which it's in now, we'd have to really be aligned in the solution, figuring out what we actually want to build, and that pretty much everyone is aligned and approved on. Okay, let's move forward with this. We're good. But nothing's actually been designed or actioned on yet. And then that moves into the planning process here. So in this process for us, in this status, the work is planned for, and it has really clear design requirements and alignment. But the designer doesn't have time to work on it yet because they're really working on something else, probably something else that's in progress. And so to leave this stage, really, it's as simple as the designer has time to work on something. So then they pull it into in progress. And the in progress stage here is that obviously they're working on the work. But the exit criteria is a bit more complicated. So to move to dev support, there's a few different things that need to happen. The designs have to actually be approved by our design leadership as well as our PM leadership.
That's right.
So we actually have a pretty relatively rigid approval structure that we want to make sure everyone sees things. It was transparent. Everyone's aligned on those final designs. We also want to fully annotate our designs. So before we move to dev support, we actually do all our red lines, all our annotations. Send the engineers obviously our dev spec link that we have in the product. Simplifies that a little bit. And then in addition, what we've also been trying to do is have more metrics in our process. So we also want to define some metrics and some analytics that we actually want to track here. So if a designer is, say, designing some awesome new feature one, and they're like, I have a hypothesis on what data we want to receive from this, they will actually communicate to the engineering team, hey, I think we should track this button or X behavior because I want to see how that happens. And we need to communicate that here so that the engineers have time to build out that analytics tracking.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I feel like one of the things I wanted us to do in the next 20 minutes maybe is to take this, right? And there are a lot of things that are great about JIRA, I'm sure everyone will agree, but I wish it was cleaner, simpler, and designers could design it.
Yes.
And I want to see if we can try and achieve some of that here. Yeah. I see some other tools coming in like Bear, which is interesting. I don't know if I've heard of that one before.
I haven't heard of that one.
So if we can switch to...
let me finish really quick here. So the final stage here is just really dev support. So this is just allocating designers time to actually working with the engineering team. So they shouldn't be working on any designs at this time. They should really just be working on supporting the engineering team via like Slack, email, all that stuff. Just like going to meetings, answering questions. That's really the main piece of it. And then if there is work that comes up, we'll push it back to in progress and they'll actually start working on stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting, and one of the things I wish we had an easier, more efficient way to do is to figure out, how much time is being, taken by a designer in each phase. Because these cards are all the same size. Would give you this sort of wrong impression that a designer has 5 tasks, but you don't fully know which task is heavy, which task is light. That's one of those pain points I wish maybe we solved now.
So because a lot of times over 30% of your time can be spent in dev support, and that may fluctuate. So having some kind of gauge on that would be awesome.
That's right. So I don't know if we can switch to my screen for a second. Maybe start designing some of this. And some of our audience members can contribute to some ideas as well. So what I'm going to do first is import a sketch UI kit. Someone did this UI kit in Sketch, but it's the one that Ryan used for what he did. So I'm going to just open this up in XD, and pull in some things, because we have this amazing sketch import feature, which allows us to just open any sketch file, just like if it were an XD file. Boom. So what I like right here is this dashboard. So I'm going to copy this and try and abstract this a little bit. Because one of the things I noticed with our dashboard that we have in JIRA today is as someone who wants to quickly track progress and track to see who's working on what, I feel like that's a lot of information. I feel like there's a lot of information. Take even the card, for example. This card, maybe I can simplify this. I don't know how I would. Let's see. I don't know if anybody has any ideas on how to simplify a card like this. I'm going to remove. Notice how when I imported it from Sketch, it brought in all the components as well.
It worked very nicely.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? I'm going to try and, create some of my own using some plugins maybe. There's some really interesting plugins that we have that our community a community of developers have given us for XD. One of the things I like to use is, where did that go? Oh, that was in a different build. But I'm going to try this. And this plugin, which I really like actually. It's called User Profile. It allows me to put faces. I was using it the other day. It was a lot of fun. Essentially, I just like faces. So I'm going to try and draw a simple sort of circle, right? And fill this up with a face. That's pretty cool. I like this plugin. It's so simple. You just select a circle and click on this plugin, and it just, boom, adds a face. What I really want.
Profile picture right there as well.
I know. Like it. I can change it.
I like it. I like it.
All right, let's change it somewhere. Is that less dramatic for you, Brian?
I like the dramatic. This is good.
Right. But really, the two most important things is who's working on what, right? Is I think what I really just need. And something as simple as this would give me a quick idea of who's working on what. And I wish this was, a simpler, whatever, card that I could use in JIRA. There is priority sense, but I feel like in the way we work, though, people are working on things that are higher priority, and we sort of things that are lower in priority, probably not in the same phase. Is that true, or do you think that we need?
I think it's pretty naturally prioritized. So I think we were pretty good at using the board that I showed previously to do prioritization on its own. And so, the designers actually will go in every day to their JIRA board, filter by themselves, to showcase only the work that's assigned to them. And then they have their priorities right there. So I think the different levels of prioritization is maybe more helpful for engineering or when you're in your backlog, but actually actioning on design work isn't as necessary to maybe have those tags, I've noticed.
Yeah, and I feel like there's also this need of someone like you and I viewing it would want a different view than a designer going in and viewing it too, right? So maybe let's try and focus this on, design manager or PGM kind of view, right? And this is maybe it's just high level wireframe. Right now.
And something that would even help for that, like design manager and PGM, but even for other stakeholders that you want to share it with.
That's
just
true.
so people know what your team's working on, especially larger organizations like ours. People are always asking for status reports on what's happening, and the more we can automate that, the less time is wasted on doing things like that, and the more time we can focus on building great things.
Right. So I just drew a quick repeat grid here of columns. What I'm going to do is bring this card here, make this a component. Actually, let me check with the group. It's not a group yet. Make sure it's a group. This is the master component. I'm going to make some changes, make sure it's in the same width, have the responsive resize kick in beautifully. That's great. What are some other things though? I feel like one of the other things we touched on was this notion of how big a task is that's missing, I think, from our JIRA board right now. So, if this person, actually let me put some labels here.
What might be fun is the T-shirt sizing. A lot of people use T-shirt sizing.
That's
so small, medium, large, just very simple. I mean, that's obviously doesn't work for engineering, which I've worked with those teams in the past as well. But for design, just small, medium, and large sometimes is enough to really give you a rough understanding of what that task is, especially if it's in a discovery mode where you're still identifying the scope.
Right.
So maybe some kind of support for T-shirt sizing would be a cool little add-on.
Actually, that's brilliant. I wonder if, in our audience, how do you guys feel about T-shirt sizing and how difficult or easy it is to do? Early on in the process, I find that it's always a challenge, especially when it's in discovery. It's hard to commit, something like, oh, this is going to be medium, but maybe it's not medium. Maybe we don't want to spend that much time. We want to spend more time. So it's almost like, I wonder if there should be a way to, be able to change the size as it's moving from state to state. Maybe in planned, it's going to be a medium size, right? And maybe in some other project in discovery is really big, but then what you realize in the end is by the time you go to planned and in progress, it's actually we realize we're not going to do all of that. We're not going to boil the ocean. We're going to do something small.
I really like the idea of having the visual hierarchy change as you move through, just
right?
the card act, because there's no apps that really do any kind of card sizing as you move it through, and just so you can see at a glance, oh, that's a big task because it's a big card.
It is. I do want these things to be top line though. What are the I think this is great. I actually would love for something like this. One of the other things I think that I would like our dashboard to do, especially for both like stakeholders and designers, is to have this constant reminder of what it is to mean to move something from one track to another, right? So when it's in discovery to planned, what if there was a way that you could just easily understand when you're moving the card, like, hey, have you checked these boxes?
Right, the exit criteria.
The exit
for
criteria,
these things. Yes.
Right. So maybe it's an experience like when you move something over, maybe you get some sort of a pop-up, right? I'm just throwing ideas out there, I guess, because that's the point of this. But essentially, it has a simple sort of check boxes like, hey, have you met this condition, right? Have you talked to Ryan's friend?
Yeah.
Right.
That's definitely one of them.
I was going to say Ryan's mom, but I thought maybe that's too inappropriate.
Yeah. Maybe. But yeah, no, there's a ton of different exit criteria that we have to kind of move through. So having some kind of checklist as that's going through, and we review these boards weekly as well. Like we do a weekly stand up. So as you move it through, then you can check off those pieces, and as it's a nice reminder.
Like it would be a nice reminder, and I think it would also build confidence in that, yes, it has gone through these stages,
right? And
there is like some sort of record in showing that we've done due diligence to move this from one to another. Because there's always this question that keeps coming up about like, hey, but have you done this or have you done that? Well, did you go check the board? Mm-hmm. If it says yes, we've done it, we've done it.
Right.
I think that'll be something interesting. One last thing, I know we're sort of running out of time here, but one other thing I thought about was to have a really simple view of, okay, what is this person working on? Like, how do you filter? Mm-hmm. I think today in JIRA, you can do that. And when you do that, essentially, it just gives you that person's cards.
Correct.
Right? I don't know, that seems like it's good enough.
Well, I think what we also were talking about as well, and something we've been toying around with the team, is how do we better connect, for example, Slack and other communication tools with JIRA here. And there are obviously plugins that we can do that, but we do our not only a in-person stand-up on Thursdays where we review our board, but we also do a virtual stand-up in Slack as well.
That's true.
So it would be great if we could connect those together to kind of see, to just simply list out all the in-progress tasks and move them into Slack into a visual place that maybe other team members could see.
That's really, that makes total sense. So it's almost like, even in this, you could have some sort of a Slack integration that pulls in from maybe a specific Slack channel, messages and whatnot. Speaking of messages, maybe there's like notes that you can add here, right? Without diving deep into it, maybe there was a way to quickly expand a card, like even this, for example, right? Maybe instead of it being a large card for just showing size, maybe it could expand. And you could have like, conversations here, or like just comments, for example, from stakeholders or, even the designer saying this is where I'm at and whatnot.
Right.
To sort of give a really quick overview of the current state of the project. Because sometimes I feel like having it in discovery, sure, it's in discovery, but what does that really mean, right?
Right.
I need one more level of detail.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to get more granular, especially for a discovery process for design, because discovery process for design is so vague. It could last anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on if you cap it or not. I mean, you could just keep rethinking that problem. So to be able to update that status, or like have an understanding of maybe what you have to do to do a proper discovery and have that a little more structured as like a design-specific task management tool would help a lot.
That's true. So it looks like we're just about out of time. So I hope you guys enjoyed, listening to us talk about how we track and look at how we design in XD. And thanks for all the other tools and tips that we saw on chat. we're definitely going to look them up to see how because we're constantly trying to evolve our process. And I think that everybody does that.
Yeah.
I hope this was useful, and have a great weekend.
Cool.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.